On May 24, 1870, out in the wilds of Nevada, prospectors started digging what would become one of the deepest boreholes in American history. Though long abandoned, that hole, and others like it, still yawns open today, plunging about 40,000 feet into the earth. Researchers spin tales about strange echoes and whispers from the depths, but Nevada's got more than its share of these forgotten pits, scattered unprotected across the desolate desert landscape. The biggest mistake of my life was descending into one of them. A year ago, my job as a geologist took me to a tiny mining town in the Nevada desert. Population no more than 200 souls. Mostly retired miners, a few ranch hands, and folks scraping by on tourist dollars from ghost town tours. It wasn't my first rodeo in weird spots. I've done search and rescue ops back in the Rockies, and being a scientist often lands you in the middle of nowhere. My Spanish was rusty from college, but only a couple locals spoke it anyway, so we got by with gestures and goodwill. With the right attitude and a shared six-pack around a campfire, these were some of the warmest people I'd ever met. I hit it off especially with the town's only sheriff, Hank, a grizzled guy with a basic grasp of jokes in English. His job mostly involved breaking up bar fights or hauling drunks home after too much whiskey, though he wasn't above joining in for a round or two. We became fast friends, swapping stories under those endless Nevada stars, cut off from the world in this bizarre little bubble. At least that's how it felt until the 9th month of my deployment. One of the locals' 7-year-old son, Dylan, went missing. He'd been playing with his buddies around an old abandoned shaft, rumored to be a relic from the Comstock Lode era, a massive borehole sealed off for nearly 40 years and left to rot. Kids loved sneaking around the area, drawn to the mystery. That day, the rusted doors had been busted open, revealing a cavernous room packed with ancient drilling gear and a yawning dark hole smack in the center, about 50 feet across, depth unknown. There was a rickety elevator platform in the middle, like something straight out of a forgotten Western mining flick. All that stared back was endless blackness, an abyss that swallowed light whole. Dylan had tumbled in. I knew deep down the fall had killed him, plummeting that far. Even if there was water at the bottom, it'd be fatal. But the other kids swore they heard him cry out for help after he vanished into the dark, which sparked a flicker of desperate hope in his terrified mom. It was the first time I'd seen Hank spring into action like that, rallying a rescue op and radioing for federal aid from Reno. But out here in the desert, help was hours away at best, too late for a miracle. With my rescue experience and some basic first aid training, I volunteered, along with my colleague Stan, a mechanic who'd help get the old machinery humming. While Stan tinkered with the creaky elevator, I rigged a weighted line to gauge the depth. Our longest ropes combined stretched nearly 1,000 feet, but it never hit bottom. After a couple hours, Stan declared the elevator operational, though he'd unearthed some faded documents warning of high atmospheric pressure and temps soaring to 150 Fahrenheit down there. We suited up in ill-fitting protective gear that chafed like hell and pinched in all the wrong places. I figured we'd be hauling up nothing but a body for the family to bury, but we had to try. We stepped into the elevator, encased in a rusty metal cage riddled with holes. They handed us one ancient walkie-talkie for surface comms and a few dim flashlights. "Ready?" Stan asked, his voice steady but eyes uneasy. Hank nodded, and the gears groaned to life with a clunky rumble that echoed through the chamber. The descent was agonizingly slow, no more than a foot per second, but the shift in the air hit us fast. By 100 feet, darkness had swallowed us whole. Our weak beams barely pierced the void. "You think this is dark? Wait till you see a Nevada blackout storm," Hank quipped, his usual dry humor trying to cut the tension. Stan and I forced a chuckle. "Check the radio?" I suggested. Hank keyed it. "It works, no sweat." At 500 feet, about 10 minutes in, the walkie crackled with static-laced Russian. No, wait, it was garbled English from topside, asking our depth. "What they say?" I asked. "Just checking in," Hank replied. But Stan frowned. "Shouldn't we hear 'em chattering up there? We're only 500 feet down." Hank shrugged. "Something off about the acoustics in these old shafts." I'd never seen him look uneasy like that. "Guys, is it just me or is it getting hotter than a branding iron?" Stan muttered. Yeah, we were sweating buckets already. By 1,000 feet, a soft voice echoed up from the depths. "Help." "Did you hear that?" I froze. "Hear what?" Hank asked. Then it came again, louder. "Help." We all heard it this time, clear as day, in English. But Dylan was a local kid. How'd he know that word so perfectly? Hank shouted down, but silence answered. "Damn, can we speed this thing up?" More than an hour dragged by, past 4,000 feet, and no sign of the bottom. The voice had faded, and the heat pounded a throbbing headache into my skull. If someone was calling from down there, we should have reached him by now. "Guys, I see a light," Hank blurted, jumping and pointing into the abyss. "What are you talking about?" Stan and I peered down. Nothing but black. "It's right there, bright as a Vegas neon." I shot Stan a confused look. My gut said Hank was cracking from the heat and dark. By 5,000 feet, we'd gone quiet, moods plummeting faster than the elevator. My headache was a killer. Out of nowhere, the rig shuddered to a halt, slamming us to the floor. I blacked out for a second. When I came to, Stan was groaning beside me, but Hank? Gone. Vanished. "Stan, you okay?" He sat up, dazed. "What the hell happened? Where's Hank?" We scanned the cage. No exits, just those small holes too tiny for a big guy like him to squeeze through. Stan grabbed the walkie, static only. We yelled for Hank, but he was long gone. Then the elevator lurched downward again. "We gotta get back up," Stan pleaded, jabbing buttons on the panel. "Controls are fried, only topside works." He screamed toward the surface, but at this depth, no way they'd hear. 10,000 feet. 4 hours in, the heat was infernal. I'd passed out a few times from dehydration, even with our water stash. Stan, older than me, was fading fast. "Why haven't they pulled us up?" he wheezed. I had no answer. As I teetered on the edge of another blackout, a sound jolted me awake. singing, the most beautiful melody I'd ever heard, like an old American folk hymn, serene and pure. I didn't catch the words, but it soothed my soul. "Stan, you hear that? Who's singing?" He mumbled in his haze. The light. A warm glow bloomed in the depths, the singing swelling. The elevator jerked to a stop again. Stan was gone, poof, into thin air. But the light lingered, drawing closer, filling me with an eerie peace. It enveloped me in brightness. And then, nothing. I woke in a hospital a week later, found wandering the Nevada desert by a pair of off-roaders. No ID, no proof of who I was, and my story didn't check out. Public records showed no such borehole in that spot, which wasn't shocking for old mining claims. But digging deeper, I found the town I'd called home for months wasn't even on any maps. The ordeal had Swiss cheesed my memory. Gaps everywhere. I recalled a few colleagues' numbers, but when I dialed, they were disconnected or led to strangers. After a grueling investigation, they let me fly back east on emergency papers. My fingerprints matched some old records. No criminal hits. But home? My house belonged to someone else. Had for a decade. Piecing it together took months, but the changes were too massive for coincidence. Beyond my personal mess, history itself was off. Geography warped, whole chunks of the map rewritten. Hell, there's an entire continent missing from the globe now. Denial's a hell of a drug, but eventually, I faced the brutal truth. This ain't the world I came from.